Doubtful.
Doubtful. All right. Let's take a look at your doubts.
Now that I have done this about the triangulation of the work, I'm feeling sure about what I want to do, but the thing is that now the title of my topic does not just fit on what I'm working.
Okay. So what? Can you explain what like?
Okay, I would rather change the steps and the topic, because since this week I've been working on that and now I like what I'm doing and what I want to demonstrate with that.
Okay. So what? Do you have a thesis statement, or can you explain what you want to do?
Yes, well, this is the main idea to develop in the thesis statement. The interaction among students in small groups performed in a monitored way leads them to work to the same product to achieve the same objective in a participative manner. That's it.
Is that what you have here?
Yeah.
Okay, so the interaction among students in small groups performed in the. Alright, so who is monitoring when you say performed in a monitoring way? Monitoring.
Teacher in charge.
Okay, so monitored by the teacher leads them to work to the same product to achieve the same objective. So this is quite different than what you. Quite different. So can you talk just a little bit about these some theory, some ideas that you want to include in your research?
Okay. The main section, the first one regarding the interaction among students, belongs to the activity theory of Engstrom.
Alright, so the first section,
interaction among students, is what I.
Let me type it up here so we have it on the video. Alright, so we have section 1, student interaction. Okay, section 2,
communities of practice by Wegner.
Okay, and
finally the task-based method.
Task-based learning?
Yes.
Student interaction, communities. So you're not going to talk about differentiated instruction?
Now what I have does not belong that much to differentiated instruction.
Okay, so student interaction, and you're talking about student interaction, activity theory.
Yeah.
Anything? What else are you planning on discussing? Just activity theory?
Yes. It's too wide, so I'm taking just what I need for the interaction among students.
Okay, and then community of practice.
By Wegner. Yeah.
Okay, and task-based learning.
Mm-hmm.
So, is task-based learning? Let's see. So you have interaction.
And also I changed the first and the second and the last research question.
Do you have it here in your?
The first one says, how do interaction among students increase their English level? The English level is too wide, so I changed for their participation in the English task.
Okay, so do you have it? Can I read it there? Do you have it written out there? Or
yes.
Or tell me again. How do
interaction among students?
I see. How do interaction among students increase the English level?
There, instead of English level, just participation in the English task. Yeah.
How do you integrate? How does integration in among? But the integration, I'm sorry, what do you mean by integration?
Interaction.
Interaction. So how does interaction, or student interaction, so basically, how does student interaction increase
their participation in the
How does
English.
interaction increase
Their participation in the English task or tasks?
So student interaction, what are you going to measure? Like interaction, what's an example of, what are you measuring?
I talked to 3 teachers from the start, and all of them are following the task-based method, and they got their students working in teams, so that facilitates my work, and I will have handouts. Maybe
So could it be, can you focus on just the team, working in teams?
Yes.
How does working in teams
Because there are
increase?
students that who do not talk.
Okay, so how does working in teams increase students speaking?
Not only speaking, but participation instead.
Pero, mira, estoy pensando, I'm thinking now, Hope, what you're going to actually do for your research, right? And what is feasible, possible, practical for our semester course here. What do you have? Because we have to consider that we only have 3 weeks pretty much to collect this data. And so I'm asking these questions and so that you can reflect on what you are actually going to have to collect and research. And we don't want to be too broad in scope. We want to be specific enough that
Yes. That's why I was wondering to have like a worksheet with the names of each student, of the work, of the teams. For example, it will be for team 1 in the same class with the same teacher, but in different days. Yes. And so it would be the student 1. He only talked 1 time. The other one like 3 times or more. And so the next week, the next day, this student who didn't talk too much, talk more.
Or a word count, maybe?
Yes, but it will be observable.
Okay, but we're only talking about speaking.
Both, also doing, but yes, speaking.
I mean, my suggestion, if the topic is mainly, if this research task-based learning is primarily for speaking, I don't know how they're organizing it.
Integration. Se queda muy amplio integrarlos, o sea, el simple hecho de que si no hacía nada y ya.
All right, so writing. So how are you going to measure the writing? So they're speaking, counting words, and okay. Now the writing. How are you going to measure the writing aspects? Counting the words that they write.
Maybe.
Okay. So how does how does working in teams, or how does task-based learning help students produce, or how does it, because if you ask how does it increase participation, then you have to measure something before or not using task-based learning, and then using it with task-based learning. Same group. And that, for me, it gets a little complicated. We can do that, but you have to be prepared really to talk with the teachers and see, okay, what do they do before they do task-based learning? I'm assuming for a while they don't do task-based, now they do. And you have to observe when they don't do task-based learning. It gets complicated. And how long does the task-based learning experience last? Do you know? How long? You say that these student teachers are doing task-based learning. How long do they
been doing that?
No. How long does a task-based learning task last? Because you have to observe an example of task-based learning. No?
Yeah.
All right, so how long, do we have any idea how long? Is it one session, one lesson? Is it 1 week? Is it 2 weeks? Is it a semester? It's one per class?
Yes, the whole task is for a week, but each class must reach a task.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? 1 week is what?
It's a whole product,
Okay.
but per class there must be reached a task.
Okay, so the task-based learning would occur over the course of 1 week?
Yes.
I mean, it's like a project, no?
Yeah, it's for units, but the units are divided in weeks, and per week each day must complete a task. It's
Okay.
divided.
Okay. Do you know like an example of a task just to have an idea?
For example, we were doing a brochure.
So they would do a brochure in 1 day?
Yeah, no, in a week. But the first
Okay.
day they must
All right.
complete, and
So my point here is by product. Okay, the task-based learning is by product, and so that you can measure it by week. Right?
Okay, yeah.
You would measure it by week because it takes a week, for example, to do a product. Because you mentioned something about product. So the task-based learning in this case would be by product. Right?
I was reading about task-based, and it's focused on the process, not the product. Well, it's more focused on the process than the product.
Uh-huh.
That's why I chose.
No, that's fine. I'm not disagreeing with you. I agree. No problem. But I'm trying to begin. I'm going back to you're going to have to measure this, and you're going to have to do a research on this. So I'm trying to understand how this is going to work. So you're talking about increasing participation. So for me, that means you're going to measure their participation without doing task-based. I mean, you're saying increase, and for me that is problematic. I don't understand how you're going to measure the increase.
With this kind of worksheets?
No. What I mean is increase it based on what? I mean, like...
Yeah, basically, if they work with the task base or they didn't.
Right,
So it
exactly.
makes the difference.
Exactly.
I get it.
And so if these teachers are always doing task-based learning, well,
Yeah.
that's a problem. So
How about if they start a week without task based, and I observe that week, and then the next week I go and they start again with the task
I don't know.
based?
I mean, yeah, you could, but I'm assuming that the teachers, I mean, you're going to have to do kind of an intervention and say, okay, I want you to stop doing task-based learning. And that gets kind of to be a burden on the part of the teacher, like problematic. If the school or curriculum says test-based, everybody does test-based, and then you come in, I want you to spend a week with no test-based. My suggestion would be just take out the word increase. Okay. So we're not really concerned about the increase. No. We're concerned about the process, just as you mentioned, the process. How do teams work differently to achieve the same product? Correct?
Mm-hmm.
Am I or not?
Yes, it's still in my what I thought.
Okay. So how does student interaction differ? Right? How is it different or similar? I mean, how does it compare? You're basically going to compare the processes. So you want a research question that reflects that. You know, how do, and I'm assuming they work in groups?
Yeah.
Okay.
Always.
Small groups?
Yeah, 3 or 4.
Okay. So how does the process similar between small groups who participate in task-based learning? How does the production, and you're focusing on the production, writing and speaking. So how does student production differ among small groups who participate in task-based learning?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you have another question. You have the second question: in which ways do skillful students help?
It was kind of related to differentiated instruction, but now I don't care about that.
You don't? I think it'd be good. I was thinking like, how do
'Cause
strong students help weak students? No, quieres hablar algo de eso.
it would be to take again to my main sections about differentiated instruction, and I'm changing for those ones.
Because I mean, it could be part of community practice. I'm thinking about, well, that's fine. Whatever you want to do is fine. So what's your other second research question?
It was that one. In which way do skillful students help not very skillful students to work in group to the same product to achieve the same objective?
Oh, but you have another question. What way do students use common?
Okay, what ways of working do students use in common to reach a shared goal or task?
But that's kind of the first question, no?
Yeah, now that I think. So, total.
I guess we focus on that one question. So how do they? So tell me again the first research question. ¿Cómo quedó?
Okay, now, how do teams work differently to the same product? And how does students' production differ among small groups who participate in task-based?
But student production or how do they work together? Is that the same thing? I mean, because you're showing me examples of production, like, you know, they some talk more, some talk less.
How does
But are you concerned about their actual production of the language, or how they work together?
participation? It would be participation, which
Okay, more
would be the
specific.
same process.
Okay. Do you understand my question? The one is English production. Do you want to measure English production? And so that is how many words do they use? How many words do they write? English production, or just how they work together?
How they work together, it would be better. That one.
All right, so how they work together. So like roles, maybe. I mean, how they work together. Is there a leader? Do they? I mean, we're back now talking about concepts that you had before. I mean, I'm just asking what you want to focus on. But, you know, I really don't see much of a difference than what you had before based on what the feedback that you're giving me. I mean, yeah, you can choose the theory. If you don't like differentiated instruction, that's fine. You can talk about activity theory, communities of practice, and task-based learning. But we're still, you know, these are questions I have. You know, and this is important because this is like how you're going to measure and, you know, do your own research. Okay. And it's also going to be about what you talk about in your literature review.
And the third point would be differentiated instruction. In case I...
So, all right, so let's focus on the research question, then we'll think about the theory later. So, again, do you want to focus on production or how they work together? How they work together. So, how do students, now, are you concerned about how they form themselves, or are you interested in the teacher's roles? Does the teacher dictate? Are you interested in that also?
Both.
Okay.
Yes.
So how do students choose to work together in small groups in task Task-based learning. How do students choose to work together in small groups in task-based learning? Just to, you can check the grammar, modify it later if you want, but just to get an idea. How do language teachers intervene with small groups of language learners when conducting task-based learning? How do students choose to work together in small groups when participating in task-based learning? Something like that. Okay, so how do language teachers intervene with small groups of language learners when conducting task-based learning? Anything else? How does the student enter?
Both are completely related to this, so are fine.
How do you choose to work together? So how do they work together? So you're looking at teacher roles in your theory. You'll be talking about forming groups, how they work together. Okay, and I think activity theory, communities of practice all fit in there.
Yes, but how about differential instruction?
That's part of it too. Because the process, if they're choosing the process, they're all doing the same product, right? But they're differentiating the process.
So the third point would fit with differential instruction. The third point.
Third point being?
In the main sections.
The task-based learning? What 3 sections? Sorry.
The third section would be differentiated instruction.
Well, are you going to talk about task-based learning?
Yes.
Okay. And communities of practice, activity theory. Yeah, I would think it would fit under task-based learning.
Is part of the task-based?
Part of it, like you can differentiate within the task-based learning. Perfect. So you can talk about task-based learning, and then part of that, at some point, you discuss differentiate instruction, but for process, pretty much.
Yes, for process.
Yeah. And then we'll take out these questions. We'll just use those. So part of it is how do they assemble? How do they work together and work on their own? That'll have to be something that you observe later. Is how they, teachers that have examples where students form themselves, and then other examples where teachers intervene and tell the students basically either
1, 2, 3, 1,
either what roles or what to do. I don't know. But you want to try to find examples of both, preferably within the same teacher. So maybe a teacher has strong students that says, okay, you guys do whatever you want, and these guys, they can't make a decision, and the teacher intervenes. That would be ideal. Then you could focus on one group and compare and contrast that one group, one teacher, and look at the different groups. And you're not going to probably focus on all the groups, but you'll focus on one that's really strong, that's self-forming, and they work on their own, and maybe another group that doesn't. And so, the idea would be that you can find, a teacher or maybe 2, depending. Depends on how much data you're getting.
No. How about my title?
Don't worry about your title.
Okay.
The title, like the title of your thesis, I wouldn't worry about it. We'll do that at the end.
Okay. The part.
The thesis statement, though, is what we need to focus on.
Yeah. Now I got this. I will develop it.
The thesis statement needs to answer this. So it's going to include something about either activity theory, or communities of practice or task-based learning, something in there.
Sure. Now, I was thinking about the other teacher who is in the same school I work. And I asked her, and she told me that she's also working with the task-based, and she does part of what I'm looking for. So can I observe her instead of observing my classes?
Well, you're not going to observe your classes.
Well, I was thinking about giving my lesson plan to another teacher with my students, but
No.
okay.
No, it absolutely needs to be another teacher, another group. No, none of your students, and
Not even me as a teacher.
no. So it really needs to be. It needs to be another teacher who has their own group, and has, I'm assuming has some experience with that group.
Yes.
Has some time. It's not just like a substitute teacher. That it's a teacher that has,
Yes.
a history with that particular group.
So she can she?
Well, I think so. I mean, we can talk more specifically about the participants later, but I mean, yeah, I don't think there's, as long as there's no influence, ideally, we want to find teachers who normally do task-based learning.
We all,
And
from the start, are supposed to work.
okay. So, well then, if it's part of the START program and everybody's supposed to be doing task-based learning, I would prefer that you choose somebody that you don't know.
That's because of the time, and I don't have time to work to move to another school. So it would be to spend one of my classes to go to her classroom and observe better.
That's my suggestion. You choose whatever
It's
you.
mostly because of the time.
Okay. I mean, it's your project. It's your thing.
Okay,
I-
I will try.
We're talking about 3 weeks, and I understand you have obligations, and I totally respect that. Absolutely. I mean, I get it. But this is a project. This is your last. This is a big project, and we're talking about 3 weeks, and not even every day. It might be, I don't know. I mean, I don't. Maybe it's 3 times a week. I don't know. Or maybe you can talk to your boss and ask for some sort of flexibility, leeway into, but
But the teacher, well, this teacher, I just met her a month ago when I went to this school. So it's not that much the relationship we have. That's why.
okay. Well, if that's the only option, that's fine. Then do that. My point is that try not to intervene too much or influence the teacher,
I know.
because
I know.
the teacher
Yeah.
already probably knows what you're researching. So right there, that's kind of, it's subjective. The teacher.
Modifying what I.
Yeah, she's going to be
Yeah.
modifying her work because she knows what you're observing. So, but that's my point. Like if you chose somebody, just say, "Can I observe you?"
Why?
"Oh, I just want to observe." Right. So now they're going to be doing whatever they are going to do, and you're observing that. Then it's more objective, and that's the point. But yeah.
Okay, the only one thing I asked her is if she was following the task based. And that's it.
Okay.
Do you? Yes, that's what I do. Okay,
Okay.
thanks.
Because one of the questions will be, why did you choose this teacher? Why did you choose these participants? The senior dollars may ask you that. And if you say, "Oh, because I didn't have time to travel anywhere else, I just chose this because of my own school," I mean, that's not the ideal, the best answer, right? Because we want to have a purposeful reason for choosing certain
Because
participants.
she implement the task based.
Yeah, but I mean, if they know that they're part of the STAR program, then they know that all teachers should be doing that anyway. So it'll be kind of against your argument for. But I don't think it's a big deal. I mean, don't if that's the only thing you can do, then we'll work with it.
Okay.
But I would not share any more information about your research with this teacher, and so in hopes that it's not partial. That the teacher is pretty much doing what she would normally do if you weren't observing.
Yeah.
And just work with that.
So now can I start developing what I got for activity theory, cumulative
Yes.
practice, task based, and differentiating instruction within task based.
Yes.
Okay,
Absolutely.
I will.
Yes.
That's what
And so the first thing we need to do is modify in Google Drive your 2 research questions.
Yeah.
Go ahead and add your thesis statement first, also, and then organize according to these 3 topics.
Okay. Well,
If you want me to look at something at any time next week, just send me an email.
maybe.
And I'll give you feedback before our next tutoring session, because this is due next Friday. So
yes.
if you have a doubt, you're not sure about something, either ask me in Canvas or come by and let's discuss it. But don't spend any days like lost or not. If you're not sure about something, see me, because we don't have a lot of time, and I want to make sure you have the time that you need to do well in developing your literature review.
Maybe in a while I will correct everything, so that you can check it and okay, now you can start developing the main sections. Okay, I will
That's fine.
to start
That's
today.
perfect. That's fine. The only thing is, if you can, I probably won't have access to my computer this afternoon, so I'm just thinking I'll be trying to connect.
On Monday?
Well, no, I'll check it for sure later tonight or tomorrow morning. But if it's like super urgent, because I really want, what I would suggest is go ahead and put in this order your sections.
Is there a comment? Is that a comment in my Google Doc?
This is a recording. Everything's being recorded today that we're talking about, and everything that's being shown up here is being recorded.
Okay,
so you can
what you wrote for the research question
It's here.
in the Google Doc?
No, it's in this. It's in this note, and you can view this note in the video.
In the video.
You remember how to access the video?
Yes. Yes.
See? Okay. And so go ahead and start writing. I don't want you to send me an email if you want me to look at it, but you go ahead and start writing.
Yes.
All right, because if I if it's pretty much what we're talking about here, the first section, student interaction, second, community practice,
And third, task-based.
third, maybe the first section, activity theory instead of interaction.
Okay.
Okay, so first section, activity theory. Second, communities of practice. Third, task-based learning.
With the
Yeah,
differential
and then
instruction
different
on it.
section kind of inside there somewhere. Yeah. And then just start with that, with these research questions. Add your thesis statement in the introduction, at the end of the introduction. Don't worry about the entire introduction. And then we'll start with that.
Yes.
Go ahead and start writing. If you do want me to look at it, send me an email, but don't wait for me, just keep writing, and I'll get to you either later tonight or first thing in the morning.
Okay.
Okay?
Yes.
Everything
Yes.
clear?
Yes.
Okay. All right, Joe.
Thanks.
All right, you're welcome.